Good morning to you all. My name is John Wilds. I'm a local historian in Liverpool and I campaign on abandoned buildings as well in Liverpool. I run a portfolio, braygreen.co.uk, and today I'm here to talk about the history of Eddesbury. Now, Eddesbury was a building that I discovered probably about 20 years ago. Now you can see it on the map here. I'll do a brief 3D view. So I knew about this building for a long time. First of all, I used to pass by the building in West Derby and I didn't really give it any sort of second thoughts. It was a listed building which I knew about. I knew it was derelict at the time. I knew that City Council had owned it, and then it was just basically sort of left. I wouldn't say abandoned, we'll come to that in a minute as to why it was left, but it was just basically a building that I'd gone past a few times and thought, one day I'll have a look around and I'll see if I can get some information and I'll see what can be done and move forward from there. So one night, about 6 or 7 years ago, I was doing some research on James Francis Doyle. Now, James Francis Doyle was a noted architect in Liverpool, and he's designed some fantastic buildings, and I don't think Eddesbury ever got the actual attention needed at the time, because no one really understood, including myself, who designed Eddesbury. So I was doing some research one night, and I was trying to find some information on the burial of James Francis Doyle, trying to work out where he was buried, where his funeral took place, and so on and so forth. Now, when I was looking at James Francis Doyle's sort of Wikipedia sort of site and had a look, it's very sort of limited, but it does show a few things. Now, James Francis Doyle was born in 1840 in Liverpool, and he passed away in 1913. Now, it shows Warrington, but I can guarantee it's not Warrington he passed away in. So, we'll come to that in a moment. James Francis Doyle designed some fantastic buildings in Liverpool, and it's only when you really look at the actual buildings he's designed to go, didn't realise that. A brief breakdown on what he's done so far. He designed St Barnabas Church in Penny Lane. I had the pleasure of helping to install a peal of bells in that tower. He partly designed Albion House, which is now 30 James Street, the former White Star Line building. He also designed the Royal Insurance Building on Dale Street, which is now the Aloft Hotel. He designed part of the Liverpool Royal Infirmary. He designed the former commercial sale room building on Temple Court, which I think is now a hotel. He designed St Luke's Church in Walton, the Grand Hotel in Llandudno, St Ambrose in Widnes, St Nicholas Church in Wallasey, St Catherine's Church in Tranmere, and he's also designed the St Mary and St Helen's Church in Neston. So I was looking at Eddesbury one night and I was just having a quick look, and I'll get round to this and I'll have a look and I'll see what's what. And I was looking at an old publication called The Builder. Now the Builder goes back to, I think it's 1880s or what have you, and it listed Eddesbury. So let me just get sort of the name of Eddesbury correct. So you have, it's called Eddesbury originally. It's also called the Margaret Beaven or Margaret Beaven School. So we're going to call it Eddesbury just to give it its original name. And I was looking at sort of designs for Eddesbury. I thought one day I'll sit down and have a look and just see where we are. And I came across an image in the Builder, which was that particular image. And it said underneath, architect James Francis Doyle. Now, James Francis Doyle is one of my favourite architects because he's designed so much in Liverpool. He also helped to extend Jewel Church in 1906, and he said that the walls and the roof were tied together by fresh air, and I think had James Francis Doyle not come along and helped to extend the north aisle on the north side of the church, it would have collapsed at some point. Anyway, so I found out about Eddesbury and I couldn't believe that it was designed by James Francis Doyle. I was absolutely staggered. And then from that, sort of that date onwards, it was a case of, right, what can I find about this building, and where is it, and what's going on, and what's the whole scenario behind it. So I'll give you a brief breakdown on the actual website. So the former Margaret Beaven School is situated on the corner of Hayman's Green and Almonds Green in West Derby. It was designed and built in 1884 by the noted architect James Francis Doyle and is Grade 2 listed. The building was originally designed for the Latham family as a private villa and called Eddesbury. Today this Grade 2 building has been severely fire damaged numerous times, and I'll come to the fire after. It stands unloved, but we now have a developer who's now working on this building, and we'll come to that later. So it's dated 1884 with late 20th century alterations and additions by James Francis Doyle, architect of Liverpool. And you can have a look on the website eddesbury.co.uk on the actual official listing of what you have. Again, we'll go into the brief history. So James Latham was born in 1830 in Scotland Road to Henry and Sarah, and was baptised on the 6th of May in St Michael's, Toxteth. And it gives some various information on the actual part of James. So in 1851 he was listed as living as a lodger in Newhall, West Derby. In October 1854 he married Caroline Roscoe in Poulton, Lancashire, and they had a son, Gerald, and in 1861 a daughter, Georgine. In 1881 James Latham, his wife Caroline, his son and daughter were living at 7 Hayman's Green in West Derby. James was listed as a general produce broker and worked together with his son out of the 4 panorama buildings, 17 Tythebarn Street. And Eddesbury was commissioned by the Latham family as their private villa. James Francis Doyle took on the contract to complete this building between 1884 and 1885, and they moved in straight away into the Grand Villa and enjoyed the building, a stone's throw from the previous address. Now, their residence in Eddesbury was to be short-lived. From 1885 they lived at the address till the death of his wife Caroline in October 1890. Faced with life without her, he moved back to the family address of Heatherley in Hayman's Green, and died only a couple of months later in 1890. James Latham was buried at Walton-on-the-Hill, and the family census for the son Gerald shows him living back at the Hayman's Green address, and Eddesbury was abandoned at this point. After Eddesbury was abandoned by the Latham family, it appeared to stand empty for a few years until the Cunningham family moved in. The earliest reference to the Cunningham family living there is on an 1894 census. And again, we've gone into some brief information and brief history on Danson Cunningham. He was born 1841 in West Derby, baptised in Holy Trinity Church, Wavertree, 1842. His father and son are listed in the 1851 census, living in Wavertree, and James was listed as a cotton broker at the time. The 1861 census showing James and Danson having moved up in the world and living in one of the large properties in Sunnyside behind Prince's Park. And then 1884 Danson marries Augusta Amelia in Northern Ireland. There's more information, and there's actual a placeholder and also a census of what you've got there, which you can look into further. And then again, you've then got Danson Cunningham moving into Eddesbury and taking over. And you see, when you look at the census, you've got an entourage of people, and it lists 2 nieces, a governess, 2 visitors, and many servants. And of course this would be an absolutely fantastic place to have been. When you look at the actual servants, when you have 2 visitors listed as being in the property, and when you look at the life of Danson Cunningham, so Danson Cunningham of Eddesbury dies on the 10th of June 1915. He was listed at Tunbridge Wells, so was he visiting family on business or to move elsewhere? We don't know. Interestingly enough, Danson Cunningham was buried at All Saints Church in Chilwell. Margaret Beaven is also buried at All Saints Church in Chilwell. And also the architect, James Francis Doyle, is also buried at All Saints Church in Chilwell. Yeah, what are the odds of that? Three noted people. So Liverpool Corporation took ownership soon after and was named the Margaret Beaven School. Margaret Beaven became the first female Lord Mayor of Liverpool in 1927. She also stood to be a Member of Parliament in the general election 2 years later. The school was well used and a noted building in the area. The building was finally listed by Historic England in 1998 for its architecture and noted architecture, and the noted architect who designed other buildings within the area, which we've spoken about. So, the former school was closed for good in 2004, and the City Council had no use for it. The site had fallen into disrepair at one point and was used by the BBC show Young Dracula. In 2016, the site was sold into private ownership. Now, what I'm going to do first of all is go back and have a brief look at original images. So these are original images. These were borrowed off eBay, hence the watermark. I tried to ask for a copy of these, digital copy, and they wanted, I think it was £25 per copy, which wasn't going to happen. So these have been borrowed off eBay, one of those things. And it shows the rear of Eddesbury, and it just looks like a really, really fantastic building to have been in. Nice and spacious. You've got a basement, you've got 3 floors. Again, we've got different views of the front. So this would have been shortly after 1884 when it was completed, and it really does look palatial. It's hidden, as it was back then, by the trees, and you don't really get a sort of an idea of what's there. But again, when you look at the actual grand entrance, you really can see this was a fantastic building for Liverpool and West Derby. Again, you have the outhouse, greenhouse at the back. So it's stood in a massive grounds, and it's just one of those buildings I just think it's fantastic. To me, it just once you actually know who it was sort of designed by, it really was good. Again, we've got images from when it was in use, and you can just see it's got a large expanse of fields, various outbuildings, just a stunning building. But then you get to a point where you sort of look at the building fairly recently, before the fire. And so what happened was a bit of a strange one, and this is what I'm going to go and talk to you about now. So in 2016, the building was sold into private ownership. Now, what was really odd at the time was the fact that when the building was sold, it was sold to a private individual, and the private individual passed away shortly afterwards. And the family, it was believed, didn't know he owned the building until it went into probate, and the family realised that, well, we own this building in Liverpool. I think they were from the Isle of Man. We own this building in Liverpool. This is a bit odd. We don't really want it, or what can we do with this? So for a long time, the building laid empty, and I believe the City Council tried to contact the owners, and of course, because the owner has passed away, there was no further action at the moment. So I came in and had a look around and thought, right, okay, this would be a fantastic website, it would be a fantastic campaign. What can we do to move this forward? So I put the website together. It's a small website, and it just shows us the various images and the history of the building. And I wrote off to the City Council and I said, okay, as with Sandfield Tower, this is what I've done with Eddesbury, this is what I can do with other buildings as well. Can we work together? What can we do to look into this? And I didn't get much of a response from the City Council, to be fair. Again, with Sandfield Tower, which I've campaigned on previously, it was difficult to get a response. The building had been sold into private hands. I gave Historic England an email, I gave Save Britain's Heritage an email, and they got back to me and said, as before with Sandfield Tower and other things you've campaigned on, it's the authority to act on this particular building. So anyway, nonetheless, I brought this website together, produced a small online booklet, and really had a look into the actual building itself. So we'll go into a little bit about Margaret Beaven. Born in 1875 in Toxteth Park, Liverpool. She was the eldest daughter of Geoffrey, a bookkeeper and later fire insurance manager, and his wife Ellen Catherine Williams. Beavens were a close family who lived in comfortable circumstances. The family did once at one time briefly emigrate to the United States. However, the climate proved unsuitable for the younger children. Margaret herself suffered from bronchitis and returned home. Margaret regularly attended the South Sefton Park Presbyterian Church. Now again, I've done some information and you can read up about the census. At the time of 1911, they were living in 12 Allet Road in Toxteth. And again, Margaret eventually stood as a council candidate and elected in 1923 as a coalition Liberal, although she quickly switched to the Conservatives. Her high public profile and attachment to children's causes made her a popular figure in the council chamber, and in 1927 she was selected as Liverpool's first woman Lord Mayor, serving the year from 1927 to 1928. However, despite her popularity, she was a less than successful politician. She rejected the option taken by Ellen Rathbone, Liverpool's first female councillor, to stand as an independent, but in council she continued to fight for the single issues with little regard to party lines or a new position as Conservative representative. She died unmarried after an attack of influenza with chest complications on the 22nd of February 1931 at the Hospital for Children at Leesow, which she had helped to found, and was buried at Chewell Parish Church in Liverpool. The link between the Cunningham family and Margaret Beaven is as follows. Mr. Cunningham, who had a disabled son, was among the wealthy people who pioneered outings for children with disabilities. They would take the children and carers on outings to Wirral and elsewhere in their expensive cars. The Cunninghams knew Councillor Margaret Beaven, later Liverpool's first woman Lord Mayor. So, images of Eddesbury. So again, we're looking at Eddesbury from interior and exterior, and this shows the original images of how it looked in 1884. You've got the drawing room. You've got this is the Latham family. You've got gorgeous fireplaces. You've got one of the bedrooms and the grand fireplace. You've got another drawing room. You've got the Latham family. Again, you've got the Latham family. And that is the main downstairs area. It's just a palatial building. You've got the main staircase. Again, you've got the wooden staircase. Most of that now is completely fire damaged, unfortunately. And you've got the rear of the building. Now, a lot of people have been in. I haven't yet actually been in myself. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why I'm looking to get in at some point and moving forward with the developer. So I wrote this website and I wrote an online documentation on the building, and I put it up on the website and had a look around, and there was a lot of interest, and people sort of said to me, what's the next step? Well, I spoke to various people and I said, okay, what can we do about this? And for quite a couple of years there was no real interest until I got a phone call from a developer, and the developer phoned me up and said to me, can I just get your sort of background on this building, what you're doing with it, is it your building? And I said, no, I'm just a campaigner. I campaign on abandoned buildings. This is part of the portfolio which I've campaigned on. It's by one of my favourite architects, James Francis Doyle. And so we got talking, and the developer said to me, we're interested in purchasing the building. You've done a fantastic brief on the history so far, and this is what's caught our eye. He said, we've known about this building for a couple of years, and it was on the back burner. He then turned around and said to me, what you've done on the website is fantastic, because it's highlighted the building, it's highlighted the fact that it was the architect James Francis Doyle, you've put the interior images, you've done exterior images. He said it's given us a real boost in finding out the information on what's actually there and what's actually it can become. So I then had a further set of phone calls with the developer, and the developer said to me, we are now in talks with the city council of purchasing the property from an owner, from the private owner. He said that what needs to happen now is that they will go into the building and do 3D images and 3D sort of LiDAR scans. So we had a really good phone call, and when I spoke to Jamie, and I'm sure he's not going to mind mentioning his name at all, when I spoke to Jamie, he showed me the amount of detail he'd gone into with regards to mapping out the building. So he'd gone into every single room and mapped out the building and done 3D designs. And I'm just showing now various images from its time, partly as a sort of a school, and you can see the various images as it was when it was left in 2016. So I spoke to Jamie again. I said to Jamie, the building is under constant attack from vandals, it's been partly fire damaged, this needs to be saved at some point, what can we do about it? So Jamie went back and went into the building, 3D designs were done, everything was looked into, everything was designed, and you can see the beauty of the building as I'm showing you now. Although it was in need of restoration at that point, it was still a secure building, and there were still the original fireplaces. And so you have the attic rooms, which again, not particularly pretty at the time, but lots of room for restoration on particular areas. And the idea was that Jamie and the team would then go into the building, and if planning application was approved, take as much out as possible, leave the original parts in, and move it around for apartments. So when I had a phone call with Jamie, he turned around and said to me, well, the grand plan is to put in a planning application to have a look at what we can do to move forwards. And it was the developer Hassett Homes who put in 3D designs and said, what we need to do is this. We need to restore the building as apartments. We also need to build houses around the perimeter of the site. Does this meet with your approval? And I said, Jamie, said it's 100% this meets with my approval, because you are going to go in and restore the building to its former glory. You're going to rescue it from what it's just now a sort of derelict, sort of little more than a folly. This is going to be really, really good and really interesting. Now, at the time when I was campaigning on this building, there was a couple of fires, and the owners at the time would go in and secure as much as possible. And a lot of people, you point the finger and you say, oh, there's an abandoned building, there's a fire, what's going on? I can put this on record now that the developer, Hassett Homes, did everything they could in their power to secure this building. They had lasers, which if you tripped the laser would go to the local police station and they would come out. There was wire fence all around the perimeter, all the windows and doors were locked down, everything was done to this building. And yet in July 2022, somebody broke in and caused the actual sort of disastrous fire that went on through the night. 4 fire engines, aerial appliances, they stayed throughout the night, and it was pretty poor for the building, to be honest. Most of the attic rooms had gone, the first floor had sort of partly collapsed on itself, and it was just a really, really difficult sort of time for the building to see what was going on and to understand how bad it was. Now, I know how bad it was because there were pictures released, and I'm going to just briefly show a few pictures now of that's what we're looking at, or at least we were before work started. And that was the main principal staircase. The whole area was just you know, completely gone. That's the main fireplace that we saw a few minutes ago. Everything was taken out. Everything was sort of collapsed in the fire. You have the attic rooms, which they'd gone completely, so there was very little left of that, including some ornate fireplaces. One of the strangest parts about it, and this is why I sort of like the building so much, is that, okay, let me go back to showing you the principal staircase, and then let me go back and show you how it used to look. So you can obviously see there was work needed to be done. But one of the oddest things about this building was that there was a fireplace in the downstairs main room, and it was an original James Francis Doyle designed fireplace, and it is in this room. So you've got the downstairs room. Now, although this was partly hit by fire, that fireplace still survives to this day, and no one knows how it still survived, because you had part of the ceiling collapsing, you had the windows were taken out, you had a lot of water ingress. That fireplace is still there to this day and is currently being restored to its former glory. So I'm really happy as to what's there at the moment. It really is, you know, a fantastic sort of, I think this one shows that's going to be there in all its glory. So if you then go back to the building itself, and you've got the exterior, again this is pre-fire, so it shows the rooftop structure 1884, and again a lot of this will be taken out, that canopy is gone, and that shows the rear of the building. It just is a really nice building to look at. Now, one of the difficulties that you faced was when you saw the actual effects of the fire. Now, let me just go back to these photos. So what happened was the fire took place in 2022. It was waiting on planning applications at the time. So the developer did all they could to make sure the building was secure and looked after. Somebody's got in and done a pretty good job. When the developer was allowed to go in the following day, there was talk about the building being demolished, but then they had a building surveyor go in and it was told the building was secure and that we could actually continue. So these are photographs taken from a drone from a private individual, and these show the start of the works from Hassett Homes, of what they are starting to do. These were taken last year, so work will have greatly increased from this. So, but what we'll do is we'll go back to this part and zoom in slightly. So this is now the front of the building, and you can see really where the fire took place. It's taken place in the central area and taken out a lot of the actual ceiling and the attic rooms. It was just heartbreaking to see, because you know, this building, although it was sort of derelict and needed a lot of restoration, was complete before the fire, and it was just mind-boggling why somebody would do this. It really was. And so the developers have come in now, laid a false ground to have this, you know, stable and secure and level. Scaffolding's gone up, and basically what they're going to be doing now is taking all of the actual old beams off, all of the old roof off, and redoing it back to its former glory. It really will look how it used to look originally. Again, this is from the rear of Eddesbury, and you can see the actual total devastation of this building on the right hand side. Difficult to see because I understand the building, the layout of the building now. Again, you've got sort of the principal staircase. You can see the staircase here, and again there's no roof, there's nothing at all. And when you go across to the right hand side, you've got that was the actual ceiling. That fireplace here, I'll show you a photograph after of how it used to look. You've got the attic fireplace gone, a lot of the roof was gone, but like I say, this is something that was going to be taken off anyway. The roof structure was going to be taken off to be redone anyway, and you can see looking down the devastation on this building. And I just think that Hassett Homes, you know, they're an independent business. I don't believe they're funded by the state or anybody at all, and they've gone in and they've turned around and gone, yeah, that's fine, it's a heavily, you know, fire damaged building, but you know what, we'll restore this. And they're doing a fantastic job so far. I'm waiting on permission to get in and have a look around and see what's what, and just see what is going to be done, and having a look at the actual information and having a look at the buildings. And again, when you look at the campaign here, again, I've given you a brief, you know, I've done some research on James Francis Doyle. I found out who designed the building. I found out what was going on with the building. And it was just one of those things where I just thought this is a really fantastic opportunity to have a really good insight into moving this building forward. So what we have now is we have Eddesbury from 1884 moving forward into the present day. It's now owned by the developers. The developers are now restoring the building to its former glory. And again, you've got sort of the images. I've got a lot of images which are still about, that you can see from the various parts. Again, that's the actual room that's gone completely. You've got various parts of the building which some were saved, some have gone. But I'd like to think that when I next go in and have a look at the building, it will show a real clean interior, mirroring the actual original part of the actual building that used to stand. So it's going to look just like this. It's going to be restored to its former glory. Now, one of the things I think is most obvious when it comes to looking at a listed building is that when you look at a listed building in general, it's all very well to go, why isn't this building being restored, or what's going on, or what's the issue here? And I think that the building, any building at all, when you look at a campaign on a building, it goes to show with Eddesbury what was missed out. Because when I looked at the actual building, I sort of had a look around, and yeah, you know, I'll get around to this building at some point, and I'm sure many other people had a look at this building and wonder what the history is. And it's only until I knew it was a James Francis Doyle, then straight away I was in this, and it was just literally, right, what can we do about this building? And so when you're going to form your own campaign on your own building, my advice to anybody is the research. The research into a building is paramount, because a lot of people will bypass this building, and again, Sandfield Tower, Woolson Hall, Sandhays, and they may look past and go, yeah, that looks nice and that's good to see, but there's nothing really special about it. For me, the campaign is a case of looking at the building, looking at the history, and this is not just Liverpool, this can be anywhere. My advice is to look on Google Maps, look at your local planning office, your local archive, see who built the building, see what it was designed for. And we've now got to a point where, in my opinion, because of the history of the building, because of the website I did, because of the online documentation I've done, a local developer, they've had their eye on this and they've gone, yeah, need to go and buy that building, it looks really interesting. They've come across my website and they've gone, John's done all this before, he's done the history, he's written about the interior and the exterior, he's written about James Francis Doyle, he's written about Margaret Beaven, and he's really done his homework on this. And so I would like to say that there's been help from various people. People have done the drone images, some people have done exterior and exterior photographs. I've not been in myself, so I've taken, with permission, photos from elsewhere. But I'd like to say one thing, in the fact that this building was written off by a lot of people. council sold it in 2016. They had no further use for it. It was passed by with a couple of owners at the time. A local developer's come in and gone, that looks really interesting, there's lots of land behind it we can sort of expand on. And I've turned around and gone, this is my campaign, this is what I'm prepared to do in my own time. It's caught the eye of a developer, developer's seen it, developer's seen the websites and gone, this is fantastic. And even when I spoke to him during planning application stages, I said, this website is now yours to have your voice, to have your any concerns by the local residents we can address and say this is what's being done. And it's the first time I've spoken to a developer who has literally turned around and said to me, this is what we're doing, we'll show you all the actual images, we'll show you the 3D designs, we'll show you what's inside the building, and we'll show you sort of what we've got so far and how we're going to do this. And again, I looked around, and going from the original images from the 1884 structure, it's a win-win. Developers come round and said, we've got planning permission, we're now going to start. And again, he turned around to me one day and said to me, I can't believe you found these photographs. These photographs were never known about. So we've struggled to actually understand what it used to look like in its heyday. And I turned around and gone, well, you can now see the original structure, the original beams, the original wooden panelling, and it's all there for you. So I've worked a long time with the developer, don't get paid for it, it's purely a hobby, this is all purely a hobby. But what we've now got is the developer is now in the process of restoring the building to its former glory, and I'd like to think that for all the campaigns I've done on Woolton Hall, Sandfield Tower, Eddesbury, Santays, I can now say that this is a building that I helped to save with the developer, because it's just now on the map, being restored, and I can't wait to go in and have a look around. The idea would be is that when I get an official invite, once the building is safe, I will go in, take a lot of photographs, lots of video walk around, and I cannot wait to actually see what it looks like, because I can see it in my mind's eye. I can see the original images, I can see the school images, I can see the images from the attic rooms, what have been lost, and I think I just can't wait to see what it looks like. It's going to be palatial, it's going to be a James Francis Doyle special, and I think because I've worked on James Francis Doyle buildings with St Barnabas Penny Lane, it just adds to his portfolio, and I can't wait for the future. So that is a brief history on Eddesbury. You can go to the website eddesbury.co.uk and have a look around. It has the original images, it has the pre-fire images, it has external images. Again, it also has, if you go to the first page, it does have a walk around. So it does show a video around the building before the fire, and it shows on the right hand side the devastation of the building and the upper floors as well. That's something to look for. And again, I just cannot wait to see the final product when it's going to be completely restored by Hassett Homes. They're doing a fantastic job so far. They need to be called out as the developer. They did all they could to make sure the building was secure to the best intentions. Normally people will turn around and say, oh, well, let's have a crack at that building, but no, I knew there was lasers, linked up to local police stations, there was metal barriers everywhere, and if somebody wanted to get in, they would have to have got in by cutting the actual metal fence apart, and that's what they did to get in and fire damage the building. So Eddesbury, it's there for the future. It's 1884, grade 2 listed. It's one building ticked off my list. I've still got Sandfield Tower to look at, 25 years of history and 25 years of campaigning. I've also moved on to Woolton Hall, and when you look at Woolton Hall, that's a grade 1 building which is now sort of managed decline, 1704, and I just think that what we've done now is just fantastic for the future. Have a look at my website, braygreen.co.uk. It does list campaigns on Sandfield Tower. It has campaigns on Wilson Hall. But again, have a look at eddesbury.co.uk and you've got the original images here. Information on Margaret Beaven, the images, the campaign, a piece on James Francis Doyle. And just interesting to note in the last sort of parts of the video, this is a photograph of 1906, and this is part of the extension of All Saints Church in Chilwell. At the back here is a gentleman, and I have a photograph somewhere of the foundation stone being laid of a church in Bootle in 1910, and it's the same person on the photograph. So I would now like to believe that the first and only true image that we know of James Francis Doyle is this chap at the back. So once again, thanks for listening. Have a look at the website, have a look at the campaign, even go past and see what you've got and see what's what. Again, one thing I will mention just before we finish is Standon Hall. Now, Standon Hall, again, when I was looking at the James Francis Doyle information, I was doing a website refresh on this website, and again I did a Google on James Francis Doyle. And what's frustrating about James Francis Doyle is that a lot of his work isn't really captured. So you come across things that are, oh, didn't realise he'd done this, didn't realise he'd done that, that's interesting, that's odd. And again, I did not know he designed this building. I didn't even know this building stood at the time. So I was googling his name one night, James Francis Doyle, and I saw this building appear just like I'd seen Eddesbury appear in the builder, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing because it just mirrored Eddesbury. And you know, the classic design, the window frames, the fireplaces, it was literally Eddesbury's big brother. So Standon Hall was designed by James Francis Doyle. It would have been one of his last works. It really would have been one of his last works. Built in 1910, bearing in mind he passed away in 1913, this would have been one of his last works. Standon Hall, Staffordshire, was built in 1910 as a family home for St Thomas Anderson Salt, a director of the North Staffordshire Railway Company. Building was designed by James Francis Doyle, again one of his last works, and in my opinion one of his greatest. The hall was sold to Staffordshire County Council in 1925 for a hospital. Tuberculosis patients were in the grounds in the 1930s, and in 1939 it was requisitioned by the War Office to care for wounded soldiers. The hall became a residential care home in 1983, but closed just over 30 years later. Plans were submitted to convert the hall into 19 apartments and outbuildings into 7 new homes. Planning permission was refused in 2018. In 2019, a couple purchased the property and launched it as an exclusive wedding venue with accommodation. When you look at what they've done, and I've been in touch with them and they know about my campaign on Eddesbury, and they are absolutely staggered to know there's a mini Standon Hall in Liverpool. But when you look at the images of Standon Hall, that is just Eddesbury's big brother. Let's go back to Eddesbury. Go back to this one moment. So there's Eddesbury, and again you've got your interior main room, you've got your principal staircase, and you've got one of the rooms looking out the front. And this is Standon Hall moving forward. So it's basically a larger version of Eddesbury, and it's been restored. The developer, Hassett Homes, knows about Standon Hall. But what's most interesting is that this is all original. It's never been fire damaged. It has the original windows, has original panelling, and again you look at this and you just think, wow, this is me looking at Eddesbury 50-60 years ago. It's the same wooden panelling, it's the same fireplace design, it's classic James Francis Doyle. Again, a different layout on the staircase because the building is larger, but you've got your original wooden panelling, and again you've then got the principal bedrooms, and this is now the classic view, the classic window. If you go back to Eddesbury, you can just see how different things were together. Principal staircase in Eddesbury as it was, just the same. So again, maybe I'm hoping to go down to Stanton Hall one day and have a look around, because that is just Eddesbury's big brother. But when you see that what we've got here, which is now being restored, and you see James Francis Doyle's classic work, there's going to be other buildings around that I've not discovered from James Francis Doyle. But I hope that when I go into look into Eddesbury, you can actually see his design, and it's another building saved. So that's all for me for the moment. Again, have a look at the website. If you go past, have a look at Eddesbury. As soon as I can get in the property, I will go in, have a look around, take some photographs, finally meet up with a developer, because we've only spoken on the phone so far, we've not met face to face so far, and really tick this building off the list and say, I've done the website, I've done all the history, and because of myself, because of another campaigner, Natalie Jones, who helped me with the information on the history, and because of the developer, this building is still there to this day and will be here for many more years to come. Thank you.